Okay. What are some ways in which males and females are different? And for the first part of it, just the way that you seen society think that when you were a teenager. So when you were a teenager, what were ways that society viewed males and females as different?
Boys got away with a lot more than females did.
How so, though?
Because boys, it was when I was a teenager, it was a big thing for boys to go and
Not
use
just boys, though, but also men, like of all ages. Men versus women, what was different?
the men were dominant. The
And
woman was meant to, there was very few women working back when I was younger because they were mostly expected to stay home and take care of the husband and fix his clothes, his dinner, and be a slave,
and how
basically.
do you see your current family and society viewpoint of male versus female? Has it changed at all?
It's changed significantly. They've kind of switched roles.
And how do you see it now? Just a few ways in which they're different.
They've kind of switched roles. I mean, now I see more where the woman is the boss and not the man, and the woman's working and the man is staying home with the kids, and she's bringing the money home, and they've pretty much reversed themselves. He's cooking and cleaning, and she's working and busting her ass. Sorry.
How have gender roles been defined in the past? So when you were a teenager, how did people determine gender roles? And a gender role is just what society views as the way that a boy or a girl should act.
Girls were meant to wear dresses, not spit, not step in the dirt, not get dirty, play with dolls, dishes, do the household chores. And the boys, you know, they got to wear grubby clothes. They got to go out and get dirty. They got to go play. They have to do housework because it's
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit. Hold on. Okay. And how do you think that the current viewpoint has changed?
well, I think they've pretty much look at them more like equals now. I mean, now you see boys doing dishes and boys doing laundry, and girls, they play with cars and fix cars and go out and play in the dirt and go mudding. And boys do too, but now it's not looked at like it's wrong for a girl to be walking around in pants and a t-shirt.
And when you were a teenager in previous society, when you were a teenager, how did society view sexual orientation? So if somebody was straight, gay, bisexual, asexual, how was it viewed?
There, I didn't hear much about that when I was a teenager until I had met a family member that was gay, and that was the first time I'd ever seen a woman kiss a woman, and I was very appalled by it and very shocked, and I didn't know what to think about it because I'd never seen that, and I'd never, all I knew is that was wrong, and that was that. You didn't see it.
So
And
would you say that sexual orientation wasn't something that was really discussed then, or that there weren't
it
as
wasn't
many?
something that it wasn't discussed out loud. The word sex was a private word. That was a word you discussed with your family. You didn't say that word out loud.
Well, sexual orientation doesn't necessarily mean sex, it's just a
I know,
sexual attraction.
but
But
you did.
so would you say that when you were a teenager that sexual orientations were generally just either straight or gay?
Straight, generally straight. I
And
mean, there were people that were gay, but they didn't admit it.
but do
Um,
you think that there were people who were bisexual, pansexual, asexual, transsexual,
oh,
transgender,
probably just too scared to admit it, and
but it
you
wasn't
know,
really something talked about?
move on. No, it wasn't. It wasn't something that you told people.
Okay. And then in the current society, how do you view social, or how do you think society views sexual orientation?
Some of them are against it, and some of them are for it. But it's more open now. I mean, there's gay marriages are legal now, and when I was a kid, I would have never imagined that.
Would you say that there are more different kinds of sexual orientation now than
Definitely,
when you
definitely.
okay. Okay, so when you were a teenager, how did nature and nurture go with choice, gender, and sexuality? So basically, this question is asking nature is DNA, it's what you're born with, it's what your body biologically is predisposed of. It's not something that can change. And nurture is environmental and cultural and social factors. So it's asking how did you view nature, which is like your DNA, your biological body, nothing that is what you're born with, and then nurture, which was influences from the world, from environment, from people, from your culture. And how do you think that those things went with the choice of gender and the choice of sexuality?
It went pretty well.
So, what I'm asking is when you were a teenager, how did society view choosing your gender? So, if you're born and your sex is female, how would society view choosing if you wanted to be identified as female or male versus just being
That wasn't
female?
that wasn't talked about. But there was no such thing. I
Right.
mean, maybe there was, but I never heard of it. I mean, if you were a girl, you were a girl. If you're a boy, you're a boy. And nobody nobody dressed transgender. Nobody, I mean, there was tomboys, but you know what I mean? They didn't make themselves look like a boy. Like girls, they had long hair. Girls didn't get boy haircuts. That just didn't happen. I mean, some of them had short hair, but they didn't get boy haircuts. They didn't wear boy clothes. Girls didn't wear boy clothes. Boys didn't wear girl clothes. If they did, they were a freak.
And then, do you think that society, when you were a teenager, or even just how you were raised in your family views, would have believed that somebody choosing their gender or being transgender would have been more of a nature issue where it was something where you were born that way and you can't change it? Or do you think it would have been something where it was the environment, something you were born and you were born this way, but something changed you and made you different?
I agree on both parts. I mean, some of them I believe they are born that way. I
But
mean,
not you specifically. What do you think society believed when you were a teenager? Do you think that society was more likely to believe that choosing a gender was because you were born to be the gender you chose? So if you are born and you have a vagina, then you choose to identify as a male because you were born that way? Or do you think society would have believed that it was something that environmental factors changed?
I believe it's because you were born that way.
And then, um, so for sexuality, do you think that society believed when you were a teenager that you had sexuality and your sexual orientation was because you were born that way, which would be nature, or because environmental factors made you that way? So if someone was to say they were gay, do you think society would have viewed that as they were just born gay? Or do you think society would have viewed that as they were born straight and something changed them? when you were a teenager?
I don't know, because you didn't hear about it when I was a teenager. You hear about that now. And now I believe a lot of them believe that you're not born that way. A lot of them believe that people are just confused and they're freaks, but they're not. I believe they're born that way.
Right.
But I believe society thinks there's something wrong with them.
Right. So then now, do you think that has changed?
Yeah, because you see it now. When I was a kid, you didn't.
But do you think that society believes now that it's more of you were born that way or you were made that way? You were changed to be that way.
I don't know. I think they're undecided. I think some of them do believe you were born that way, and some of them believe, you were made that way. I
Okay.
believe it's a mixture of both.
And then as far as choosing gender, how do you think that that's changed in society's views today?
Now you can choose your own gender.
But do you think that society thinks that it's something hardwired, you're born with, you're
Yes.
born transgender, or do you think that society thinks that you're changed to be transgender?
I believe that society thinks you're born that way.
Okay. And then what does my own culture play in the things that we've talked about today? And my culture would be, well, culture is any set of beliefs that is passed from one generation to the other. So growing up in a low income household could be culture, or growing up in a small town is a culture, or just growing up with Christian beliefs is a culture. Any views, values, beliefs that were passed down from Gamey's generation to your generation to my generation is all culture. And how do you think that my own culture play in the things that we've talked about today?
Well, I believe the religion has been passed down. We all believe in God.
But not what my culture is. How do you think that that affects the things we've talked about? How do you think my culture affects viewpoints in how males and females are different and how gender roles are defined, sexual orientation? How do you think that the culture that was passed down from generation to generation, the things like religion and low income households and living in a small town, how do you think those things have impacted the views on different things with gender and sexual orientation today?
I think it has a big impact. I mean, it's such a small town. Ain't nobody got nothing to do but, you know.
But like religion, for example, how do you think that our religion, which is part of our culture, being passed down as Christian and believing in God, how do you think that's impacted things like homosexuality and transgender and like males versus females? How do you think that that's changed things today?
I feel that we're more. I mean, we may not agree with it. It's not our place to judge.
Right.
It's
And how do you
and
think,
I think a lot of people, a lot of people are realizing that goes to church, but there are some that don't.
do you think that being raised around family members and friends who were homosexual or had different sexualities, different gender identities, and kind of against the norms, do you think that that's affected our views at all?
Yes, I do. I
How?
think it's affected your views. Like you've learned to not look down on them and think any different of them because you've been around those kind of people and you see it's not, it's There's nothing wrong with it.
Right. Okay. Those are all the questions I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.